Nobody thinks that they would ever falsely confess to killing their own parents. And all I can say is, with the techniques that the police have and they use, you should not be so sure. I want to discuss today, give you an example of what can go wrong when you are taken into custody. You're sat down in a room and the police want to question you. A number of years ago, I represented a very young man, a senior in high school out on Long Island. It's a case that has received a great deal of attention, notoriety. The trial was televised, gavel to gavel. His name is Marty Tankleff. And this is what happened. He wakes up to find both his parents having been stabbed dramatically, horribly. And the police immediately, upon arrival, being he was the only other person living in the house, decided he had to have been the killer. So they take Marty, who had absolutely no prior involvement with the law, bring him down to police headquarters. They put him in an interrogation room, and he went over saying how he woke up. It was his first day of school. He walked in to find his mother lying dead in the bedroom, his father in a separate room, almost having passed away from having been stabbed. And the police questioned him for hours and continued to ask him to repeat over and over again what happened. And he did. And when the police didn't get a confession from the person that they had decided had to have been the killer, this is what they did. They said, "Let's take a break, Marty." And they stepped out of the 10 by 10 foot interrogation room and they placed a phony phone call. They went out into the general area where the detective sat. Marty remained in this room seated. The door was open and the phone rang right outside the door. And one of the detectives who had been questioning him picks up the phone and he fakes a phone call. And what he does in earshot of Marty is say, "You're kidding me." And he hangs up the phone and he says to Marty, "You know who that was, Marty?" He says, "That was Detective Falsgraf calling from the hospital where they rushed your father. And right before he died, you know what? They just shot him up with adrenaline. He woke up, and when they said, 'Who did this to you?' he said, 'Marty, my son.'" And Marty's immediate reaction was, "Marty, how could that be?" And he thought some more. Marty says out loud, "Could it have been another Marty Tankleff? Could I have blacked out?" And at that point, Marty would be the first to say, he started thinking, could it have been possible? And then what happens becomes much murkier because the detectives do not videotape the confession. They wind up testifying in a series of questions that followed that Marty then confessed to killing both his parents. And Marty again testified at a trial and admitted, "Yes, I did, because I really did think that I had to have killed my parents." But he knew that he hadn't. Yet, at trial, the strongest evidence against him was what turned out to be a false confession. It happens. Nobody thinks that they would ever falsely confess to killing their own parents. And all I can say is, with the techniques that the police have and they use, knowing the vulnerability, especially with younger individuals vulnerable to police coercion, you should not be so sure that even you would not be convinced that you may have done something as horrific as they were now accusing Marty of doing. After serving many, many years in prison, Marty was released. He was exonerated. He then went to law school and he got his law degree. And today he's practicing law and he's doing God's work in fighting false arrests, false confessions, and wrongful convictions. So the lesson here, when you hear that somebody has confessed, don't jump the gun. You can be sure that it can happen and you have to keep an open mind. But it's real and it's a real danger and it's a real problem in our law enforcement system.